to Unapologetically Fierce with Faythe, brought to you by CKJ Live. This is a safe place where my beloved tribe members and I put anything and everything on the table and dish the unfiltered tea. We are not just a podcast, we are a movement. So get your favorite beverage on hand and enjoy the show. Hi everyone, my name is Faythe and I'd like to welcome you to another great episode of Unapologetically Fierce with Faythe. And I have a few of my favorite people from my tribe. This is a safe place where we put anything and everything on the table and we dish the unfiltered tea. I'd like to welcome Tamara, Myrna, and Kerri. So we've been on this topic of COVID-19, life in COVID, because that's honestly that's what we're living. We don't know, everything is uncertain. The first week we had it where, the first week when we had it, we were talking about our personal, because our lives shifted. So our lives shifted personally, then it shifted how we work, because things have changed where we work from home. And this week, which is part 3 of 4, we're going to talk about education, because that's a big thing. Not only is it for our kids, but also as professional development. We always want to grow professionally, but now we have the task of teaching our children. Today we have some great guests. We have Kristy and Cathy.
Welcome.
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. So, and also what I want to talk about today is that some of what we will focus on is the class of 2020. You can see in the news that they've been posted everywhere. And someone in the tribe actually has a class of 2020 graduate, Myrna. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. Okay. So what I'll do in starting is that with the class of 2020, there were a lot of changes because this shift happened in March. So that's in the middle of their senior year. You know, you focus on proms, gosh, it's been so long since I've been in school. Night testing, seeing your friends for one last time before you go off to college or wherever you decide to go after college. So Myrna, I know that your daughter is a class of 2020. How were things? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, her experience was, it was abrupt, which I'm sure most kids in Florida, across the nation felt. One day they just sort of went to school and then that happened to be the last day of school. They didn't know about it. For her, it was even a little trickier because the next day was what the seniors here practice senior skip day, where, and I'd given her permission to skip school, participate with all the other seniors. So she took advantage of that, and then that happened to be her last day of school, and she wasn't aware. Schools just abruptly shut down. I think the transition at first felt like a bit of a vacation. She's a really studious kid. She takes her academics very seriously, so she kind of fell into learning from home pretty naturally. There was some bumps in the road, just kind of getting acclimated with quiet time in the house since now her little sisters are home too, schooling. But she kind of, figured all of that out. The psychological effect is where I really noticed a difference in her, because as you mentioned, Faythe, it's senior year, so there's activities that are planned, the senior trip, prom dress shopping, prom in general, graduation, commencement ceremony, all these things that you work so hard, all the time, especially if a student takes academics so seriously, and not having that full experience and it ending so abruptly. She walked in her room we had, graduation, which was like a drive-through graduation that the school put on, and it was an amazing experience. So it was nice. It was something. One of the parents put together a prom for like the closest group of friends, and that was very nice as well. It's not the full experience, but it was something. But then she walked into my room just yesterday, having picked up her official, the actual diploma, and came to show it to me and burst into tears. And she's not the kind of kid that normally responds that way. So I realized it took a toll on her. I think she's trying to make the best of it, like all the rest of the kids that graduated this year. I always remind her that she has a very unique place in history now. Having had that experience, not many people will be, thousands of kids, but not many people will be able to say they had that experience. But it's like you mentioned, Faith, it's the idea of not being able to see your teachers for the last time. Friends that are going off to different colleges across the country, not realizing that they, with all the COVID concerns, weren't really going to be able to hang out during senior year before the kids went off to, these new locations and stuff. So it's been an emotional roller coaster for her. I think she has a really good perspective on it, but I feel sad that it had to be this way. There's nothing we can do about it, but, she's making the best of it. And as a mom, you just want to make it right, but...
Of course. And I know that, like, we all, like, if we all look at our academic...
I'm sorry, Faith, I'm not hearing you. Is anybody else having trouble picking her audio up? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I know that we all have our own, like, if we look down in our academic journey, we look at different things that we're like, okay, this stands out in history. Like with Kerri, Cathy, and myself, we were part of the Olympic class. And I remember, do you guys remember when we came and that's all they talked about, because they knew that the Olympics were going to be in Atlanta. And they knew that we were going to be part of the Olympic class. You guys remember that?
Yes.
And it was just like a hype, because we kind of said after, we're like, well, we were in the Olympic class. We were in Atlanta during the Olympic, so it was kind of like a stigma or something like that. Everyone knew.
A point of pride.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's a kind of pride, a prideful thing. So I'm sure that she will also, along with her other classmates, think about that. Like, gosh, remember that time when, school we just kind of flipped the script.
There's a resiliency that's going to come from having had this experience that I think is going to be very unique for them. Just like any kids who've survived like school shootings or any kind of tragic thing that's happened, I think there's always a silver lining. So I think that's kind of the thing that she's hanging on to right now.
And I think that it will also help her on her journey into adulthood, like going to college. Because a lot of times I remember, like, when I went to college, when I was in high school, I had these events. I went to some of them, but I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, when I went to Atlanta, I froze, because I was just like, okay, yeah, I know I wanted to be here, but I'm like, who are all these people? Like, where did they come from, But then I kind of like made myself fit in, to a certain degree. So
I think it's interesting. I think it's really interesting that you need to just keep holding her close and checking in on her, because that social piece is so important and we don't realize it. But at that stage, that's all they have, right? They don't have a career. They don't have a lot of freedom. They don't have that independence. What they have is that social piece, even if it's only one or two friends they connect with, even if it's the extracurricular activities. So they're going through a lot. I think they may be going through more than we are, because we're adults. We can bounce. We're like, look, I don't want to be around people anyway. I didn't want to go into the job anyway. Right. I'm glad I don't have to commute. For her, it's everything. It's beyond gym. It's beyond FBLA. It's beyond, going to the cafeteria. It's really that socializing, that connecting. So it's difficult, and I wouldn't wish it on any of these kids, especially in this era where they are so social. But hopefully she's connecting through, of course, FaceTime or text messaging or Zoom meetings, or finding a way to still keep up with her friends so she feels connected and that was. But, it's still such a major achievement. And I hope they will celebrate the class of 2020 in the upcoming months. because all that hard work really needs to be acknowledged, and it shouldn't just be on a cul-de-sac with a car line of 5 cars. It really should be on the stage that they worked hard for, like what we got. We all got that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we tend to dismiss like everything that they're going through as trivial, because when you think of things like them being upset about like prom dresses or not getting to go to like grad night, I don't know if that's like still a thing or anything, but it's what they've worked for. It's what they've looked forward to. Like, I remember being 17 and thinking like, this is the highlight of my life at this point. Like, I worked hard for 12 years. I get to do all of these great things. It's like a reward for, doing everything. And then that just gets taken away. We have to remember that like, this is like a big thing for them.
Definitely. Yeah, and the way it was snatched, it wasn't just like taken away. It was snatched from them. Literally, like we had to kind of like go and say, okay, we're not doing.
Yeah, we were just wrapping our brain around it, and it was like everything shut down. So it was very abrupt.
Definitely. So what I want to do, Miss Cathy, I want to start with you, and I want you to tell us a little bit about your background. Of course, I know because we went to the best university in the land. So
One exceptional university.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and so everyone kind of hears about it.
Well, like I mentioned previously, I'm a 4th grade teacher. I've taught elementary most of just about all of my career. I've worked with young adults as a supervising teacher while they worked on their teacher certification. So I've served as their supervising/mentor teacher. I've serviced couple of students from Georgia State University, students from Clark Atlanta, as well as a student from Spelman College. And this was early on in my career that I had an opportunity to work with them. I'm currently here in Atlanta. I've worked also one charter school, that's Drew Charter School here in Atlanta, but it was previously a Manhattan-based school under Edison Schools, and they're here in the Atlanta area. So they've now come up under the umbrella of Atlanta Public Schools. I teach at Westmont Elementary. I've taught 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I am also a science ambassador for Atlanta Public Schools, so I help to write the K-5 science curriculum, big on science education. What else?
I think it broke up a little bit, Cathy, when you were mentioning where you worked right now.
Okay, currently I teach at a very small elementary school, West Manor Elementary School. We service right at maybe 300 students, very small. It's considered the like a honey hole. Not many people know about West Manor. It's in a pretty, I would say it's a nice neighborhood, nice community. The parents the students that I serve, many of their parents also attended the school. I would say that particular neighborhood may have been integrated in the late 50s, early 60s. It's now a predominantly Black neighborhood. A lot of the parents who have students that attend my school, they do not live in that area. Their parents live in that area. Most of my parents live downtown, and they actually drive their students in so that they get the West Manor experience that they received as children. So initially when I arrived at this particular elementary school, there was a great deal of parental involvement, grandparent involvement. They pretty much ran the school, which was a good thing. All hands on deck, stakeholders within the community feeding into the school financially, time-wise. So it's been a pretty good experience at this particular school. Strong sense of school family. Now things have changed because over time we have redistricting lines being recut. So you bring in students from other areas who may not come from the same background as what we had before. Can you all still hear me?
Faintly, yeah.
Okay.
Better now.
Okay.
But that's good because I know that everyone, like parents, want the best for their children, and they'll take them to whatever neighborhoods or wherever they can get that education. Now I know I was a short-lived teacher. I don't think that was for me, but I remember seeing that as far as like, and that's good when you do have that involvement, when you do have that parental grandparent involvement, administration, when they're involved and everything like that. But that could really be another episode, and maybe one day I will write my story. So I will go to the next question. How did because this change happened, I remembered because it started on someone's birthday. I won't say any names. I won't say any names.
got in right the wire.
So and that was like mid-March. So and I know that's like mid-semester of the final semester. How did you have to adjust? Like, what protocol did they have? Did you guys even have an emergency protocol if something like that were to happen?
No, we didn't have any emergency protocol. At the time, we had started what is called extended day tutorial. So this is a tutorial session that is intensive, and it's to help prepare the students for GMAS, which is the Georgia Milestone Assessment, standardized testing. So this was on Thursday, and I had just completed extended day tutorial, which ends at 4:30, and a couple of my other colleagues, they came through the halls and they said, "Hey, did you check your email?" And I said, "No, what's going on?" And they're like, "Hey, we're set to roll out of here tomorrow." They're encouraging all parents to send their kids, which was Friday the 13th, March 13th, to school so that we could pack them up and send them home with packets of work to do, because initially the anticipation was that we would only be out for 2 weeks. So, that was Thursday the 12th. So Friday the 13th was more so paraprofessionals kind of holding classes while teachers put together packets of work and assignments to, I guess, pretty much cover the next couple of weeks of school. And that was it. And I was fortunate enough to I have a very small class. As I mentioned before, my school is very small. I have 15 students. So I was fortunate enough to have 13 of the 15 who actually showed up that Friday, and they were able to receive the assignments that I had put together for them. And from there, we went through this 2-week period. And then within the course of 2 weeks, we realized, hey, we're having Zoom meetings or Google Meet meetings, staff meetings, and we're realizing now from the principal, he's being told to tell us that we probably won't go back for, in the next 2 weeks. So at that point, we began rolling out Chromebooks, because our school is well equipped with Chromebooks and iPads. And we were moving into, I guess, what is called phase 2 of distance learning, to ensure that the students had devices so that we could communicate with them and still push out assignments through Google Classroom and whatever other types of apps that we were using. And then there was another push or initiative from our superintendent, Maria Kostarfin, to ensure that the students had Wi-Fi and internet connection in their homes and that type of thing. So we went from phase 1 with the packets to phase 2 with the technology. And that's where things got a little tricky.
Oh, wow. And I know also usually that around March, that's when you have the testing, right? That's when the testing comes, the state testing, that's like the kind of like the pinnacle of like the whole school of what the students have learned, just to see where they're going to go next year and everything like that. Did that?
When we do a series of benchmark testing through the year outside of the state mandated testing, the thing that I would say was not a good idea was that our state governor, he announced that he was going to exempt all K through 12 students from testing. And he made this statement shortly after school was released due to COVID. So what that did was it sent a message to students as well as, and please forgive me, irresponsible parents, that pretty much school was over, because in their minds, hey, if our students aren't going to be tested, then so what? Okay, big deal. So now school is over. And this came like maybe in the late part of March. So with that being said, the responsible parents, they moved to the next phase with us in terms of getting their students online with us to do the distance learning. But then you had those other parents that, hey, after March 13th, I didn't see them. I hadn't heard anything from them, regardless of phone calls, regardless of social workers reaching out to them, regardless of secretaries and principals reaching out to them. You didn't hear anything from them because the governor put that message out there that, hey, there won't be any mandated testing, as well as a message of students will not be failed this year. So all students were passed on to the next grade. So when you put all of this out early on, right after us going into this whole new way of learning, it just set the wrong tone. It set the wrong tone for any further learning at that point.
Definitely. And it's kind of like a disservice to them, because it's like, here you are, you're establishing these online classrooms, these resources that the county has given. And some parents are just like, okay, well, I got to go to work. And some of them are essential workers. Like they can't, they work at grocery stores. They work at different places. They work in hospitals, so it's like, okay. And especially if they're a single parent, they're kind of like, okay, well, that's something on the list I don't have to worry about, Right. And again, it's a disservice to the children. So I know school is out. We're in summer, so happy summer. I know that.
You made it, yay!
You made
it. To all the teachers, because you guys made it through. I'd be lost without my kids' teachers.
Wow, definitely. We appreciate parents like you, because I have a strong sense that you were an active and involved parent, and we counted on parents like you who, I have elementary kids, and I had strong parents that were good about getting their kids up in the morning and getting them a little breakfast in the morning and getting them ready for class and making sure that they weren't somewhere laying in bed trying to communicate with me via Zoom or Google Meet, but actually sitting up at the kitchen table or at a desk and, engaged in whatever lessons I had to present, through the week. So we couldn't do it without the help of the parents, even in the midst of parents.
It really does have to be a partnership. Absolutely. It has to be a partnership.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, especially in times like this where everyone's sort of just trying their very best to get acclimated, kind of figure things out. It's so unprecedented that I think everyone needs to kind of work together and figure things out. It hasn't been perfect. My youngest daughter fell behind, and I wasn't aware of it. You see her doing work, but she hadn't really learned how to manage her time really appropriately. Working from home, I have worked from home for several years, having to suddenly kind of like mentally shift to also helping her out, and just I realized even with my with me trying to be as involved as I was, she kind of helped through the cracks in a couple of classes. We were able to catch her up, but this is why I said I lost without my kids' teachers, because that came as a message from the teachers who was just, hey, this is not Ava typically the way that she behaves, so I'm a little concerned. And had she not sounded the alarm, who knows what we would be. But to your point, it is a disservice to the students, because the truth of the matter is, even if they pass on till next year, all of this information, they're going to bump up against next year's classes when they're in fifth grade, and all of the things they should have retained in fourth grade are not present, going to show up. And this is where it takes the partnership between the parents and teachers to really get involved and make sure the kids get what they need. So they're ready for next year. It's great if you just get passed along, but eventually that's going to show up on tests and things like that. So this is a story that's going to be playing out for months to come, I think, unfortunately, even when things go back to normal.
Well, it's been mentioned that this is going to have an extended effect on all students academically. I would be telling you a fib if I was to say that we're going to be able to get students caught up, next year. I felt such a void not being able to physically be with my students, at the end of the year. It really did something to me because I just felt like I wasn't reaching them as I would normally reach them, that face-to-face connection and being with them, on a daily basis and being able to meet with them in small groups and hone in on things, as I would, so to speak, with them right there with me. That really bothered me. I don't know. It just made me feel some kind of way, because I've been doing this a long time and this was just surreal, having to teach a kid, and then it's just certain experiences you can't do through this type of platform. You just can't.
Absolutely. Especially like kids with IEP, with special IEPs and all that kind of stuff. It's difficult. They all have like individual learning plans that it kind of goes to the wayside, and it's unfortunate. But what I guess now that we're in the summer, what would you recommend to to parents that are home, that are with their kids? What do they need to do? Because there was no testing, so there's no evaluation that can be done. What would you recommend them do?
Okay, well, and this gets tricky, but I can only speak from what we have accessible where I work. But if you are a parent, or if you know of any parents who have been using any type of technology that was accessible to their student, my thing would be to continue to check with the district to see if those resources are still available. So my students, we use iReady Reading and iReady Math. And I know that we have what is the backpack, and all of their apps are placed in the backpack. So students can access that backpack with their student ID numbers, and it gives them full access to a plethora of resources. So they have accelerated reader where they can continue to read and build up their Lexile levels and take AR tests. They have iReady Reading and Math, which we do a benchmark assessment with them, and it places them according to their level. It's adaptive. So if they, like I told my parents, I held a virtual award ceremony for my parents. And at the end of the award ceremony, I was able to inform them that, hey, just because I'm not going to continue to meet with them doesn't mean that you can't get them into these resources, and they continue to work on their math and reading skills. And what happens is with the iReady Math and Reading, as your student progresses, it's adaptive. It'll keep bumping it up a notch so that they continue to be challenged and move forward. I will say this was a challenging year for me because I worked with the GATE students. So I had the gifted students this year, and that was something pretty interesting. Personalities are well developed, and the parents want them to continue to stay engaged and challenged to grow. So, of course, I had parents to reach out to me, hey, Ms. Carter, what can we do over the summer? Typically, these parents will be able to get their kids into programs like Xanadu and all of these other challenge programs over the summer for summer camp. Those things are not really accessible. I know that there are a couple of technology camps that are available online, but you're right. The parents want to know what they can continue to do to keep their students mentally and actively engaged and mentally stimulated and growing and moving forward. So that was what I was able to share with them. I did have a parent reach out to me last week, and I was able to run a report and through those different apps, I'm able to give them prescriptions that are assigned for their individual child. So it tells you your daughter needs to work on summarizing skills, or she needs to work on geometry and measurement skills. So it tells me what their strengths are and their weaknesses are, and I was able to communicate with the parent and tell them what.
That's awesome. I can talk about education for so long. You're gonna have to. You're a friend of the show now, so you're definitely gonna have to come back. But thank you for all of your wisdom in that. Like, I knew that you're like. Thank you for that. It's always.
I would say one last note on that. In order for this to moving forward, my school district is looking at 3 different models for getting the kids back into school in August. The model that is standing out the most is going to be an A schedule and a B schedule. So they're looking at having splitting your class in half. Your students, Group A students would come on Mondays and Wednesdays. Group B students would come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Fridays, those would be professional development days for teachers to become more acquainted with how they can enhance their teaching online. So we would be in like some type of professional learning type sessions on Fridays. That's one module. So, and what they're looking at for parents like Myrna, who have kids across different grade bands, they're looking at aligning your children. Let's say you have a daughter who's in the 10th grade, if she's on an A schedule, then your 3rd and 5th grader would also be put on an A schedule so that Myrna can go to work and be okay with the 10th grader, making sure that the kids are okay at home because they're all at home on the same days. So they're looking at aligning all of your children in one household on the same block.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
And that's been the beauty of COVID. I think the beauty of COVID has been that it has pushed people to start thinking outside of the box. And it's
right.
The unfortunate thing was we realized how unprepared some of our systems were for a lot of these things. I work for a private for-profit school, and we made a seamless transition to virtual learning just by nature of the program that we have. But I realized the public schools, as a mom, students in public schools realized they were wholly unprepared. I think the beauty of this, the silver lining I'm always looking for this situation has been there's outside the box thinking. That it's not a one size fits all approach.
Right.
And maybe moving forward, whether it's a pandemic or not, that we have these approaches in place that they have been tested and have been tried out and work. So yeah, that's a great. I like that.
That's good. That's good. Thank you, Cathy. Now, Miss Kristy.
Hello. So before we proceed, I actually have a quick question about that. Cathy, how will they accommodate parents who are working Monday through Friday and who rely on their children to be in school so that they can work full time?
Right. And that's the question that we all have, even as educators, because there are 2 other models. The other model, Kristy, is a week on and a week off. And that's not going to work. You're going to have kids come to school for a week and then take a week off. So that's not going to work. And then the last model is to continue with virtual learning. So it's looking like that A-B schedule is going to be the one that they pick up. How they're going to work with parents who have to get child care and all of that, I don't know how they're going to work out the kinks for that. I honestly couldn't even begin to tell you how they're going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Kristy, tell us a little bit about yourself and because you're more on the higher education end. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So given my background, I am a health scientist by trade, but I am most passionate about working in higher education. And I've been in higher education for over 15 years. I started my career teaching for the Community College of the Air Force while serving on active duty. During that time, my job in the Air Force was healthcare administration. And I actually went and taught the career at the schoolhouse for the Air Force. And what many people don't know is that the Air Force's training schools, they are regionally accredited by SACS. So it's accredited just like any other junior college, Clark Atlanta, they all have the same accreditation. So coming off of active duty and moving into education, I spent about 2 years teaching fourth grade. And like Faythe, that teaching elementary school, I enjoyed it, but it definitely was not my niche, but I still was passionate about education. So I moved into higher education, and I took a position down in South Florida, teaching at a community college there. Many of you may be familiar with Florida's model. There are 28 schools, 28 community colleges in South Florida, but we no longer refer to ourselves as community colleges. Around about maybe 2012, I believe, all of the 2-year institutions in Florida transitioned to 4-year institutions. So we provide open enrollment similar to a community college, but we also provide students with the options to continue to get their bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Science degree based on the workforce needs in that area. Outside of what I do as a professor, I'm a college administrator. If you have known me, most of my work, my friends know that I am very passionate about working in the Glaze region of South Florida. So I've worked out in the Belglade area and tried to do as much work as I can there. But I also was at the forefront of, when I first started working on my doctorate degree, I was at the forefront of when higher education was really coming online. So back in 2008, I was hired to work for University of Phoenix when I was first transitioning out of the military, and I did a lot of online part-time work for several proprietary institutions. So I have a background in both the nonprofit and proprietary section in higher education. In addition to that, in working as a academic dean, interim roles as department chairs and academic deans, I've been exposed to the administration side of the house, and I understand some of the challenges that we face. And then finally, I have a second career. Faythe knows that I have about 1,000 jobs, but I have a second career in the military, and I was able to continue on in the reserve. So I am a logistics officer down at Homestead Air Force Base in the reserves. And I really enjoyed that because a lot of the students, when serving as an administrator or a professor, a lot of the young people that are coming through Homestead and joining the military, a lot of those are young people that I also see on my campus. So it's been something that I've been able to really build relationships with them based on that, because I get to see them on both sides of the house.
So why are you said that you were passionate about Belglade. I know about Belglade because you actually schooled me on Belglade. I didn't really know much about it except for it being like farmland, all of that. But for those that don't know, for Kerri and Cathy, they're in Georgia. So can you tell us a little bit about why you're so passionate about that specific area, about Belglade?
Like I always say, these are my people out there, right? So I go out, and those are my people. That area, and it's also my people, but it's also an area where I see a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt. When we talk about some of the things that, disparities. In fact, when I did my dissertation research was based on the Glaze community, because this is 10 years ago. We're talking about, me starting to work out in an area, but at one point in time, when you talk about the Tri-City region, Belglade, South Bay, Pahokee, you're talking about a 50% unemployment rate. Palm Beach County is one of the richest counties in the United States, but yet when you drive out to the Glades, it's kind of like, hey, do people even know this region exists? Because it's almost shocking what you see out there in terms of the level of poverty. But at the same time, the Glades is a beautiful place. A lot of football players, a lot of intelligent people, a lot of great people and leaders come out of that area. But I do believe that community has been vastly underserved or underrepresented. And I'll say this, politically wise, it's easy to attach your name to stuff in the Glades, because people do that. They'll go into our neighborhoods and say, hey, we're going to bring this grant here. We're going to open this here. That makes for great politics, but are we really making a change in that area? So as I have, especially early on in my career as a professor, I was really on that social justice tip, like a lot of us do, working in higher education. And so being able to do some work out there and engage with students, doing community-based learning projects, I would send students to community meetings and have them do projects, because I wanted them to be able to speak up for the community that they live in. So that really, over the past 10 years, has been one of my greatest passions. Now, over the next, there is a demand for health scientists. So over the next year, I'll be transitioning out of education, but I'm continuing to develop myself professionally, because at some point I will transition back into higher education. But I think that it's important, as we talk about professional development, developing ourselves, is that we expose ourselves to different opportunities and we take advantage of any and every opportunity to learn, because especially at the higher education level, when we're working in the classrooms, any professional hands-on experience that we have, our students look to that. And it really validates the work that we're doing. So I think that it makes me a better teacher to have well-rounded experiences. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward over the next couple of years, to kind of going out in the field. It's sad because COVID-19 has happened, but it also has created a demand for health scientists. So going back out there in the field and actually working as a health scientist, then be able to come back in the classroom or to serve as an administrator, I think that's going to make for a more well-rounded experience for my students. Okay. And, without a doubt, I always call Belgrade, that's my little HBCU area, even though there's not an HBCU. Like in South Florida, this is about the closest I'm going to get. So anything that I can do for those students in community, and a lot of those students, they do go off to, higher HBCU institutions and higher education institutions where they can come back, and and what's so great about that area is that when they come back, when those students graduate college, they often come back and they are committed to serving that community. And I just think that level of passion that they have to better their community is not something that you often see. And so it has really been one of my great life pleasures to work and serve in both the military and in that community.
Definitely. I love how passionate you are. Like, since I've known you, you've just been very passionate about education and professional development. Just keep on keeping on, especially your love for Belgrade and just getting those, getting people where they need to be. And kind of like focusing, because a lot of times, a lot of times when we get out of high school, if we don't have that backing of like, okay, well, what do I do now? Because Cathy, you were talking about how some of your students, the parents, they were like March, whatever, that was the last day of school to them. And it's like you're fending on your own, where you have other parents where it's like, okay, no, it don't stop here. This is what you're going to do, this, that, and whatever. And I know, like, with myself, it wasn't a question about, like, when I was choosing colleges, it wasn't a question of if I was going or when I was going. I was going to go. It was just where I wanted to go, because I'm sure that with the mother I have, she would have been like, okay. So, what you doing?
I often say that as an African-American woman and working in higher education, this is not, I think that any Black woman in a leadership position, I feel like that, or any minority period, this is not just, I am a professor, right? It's not just, I'm in the classroom serving as a teacher. It is, those students see me as, here's a Black woman, young Black woman with a doctorate degree. She's educated. They're looking at every move I made. And I think it's the same thing that happens on the side. I am like the only Black female officer. I'm probably like one of 5 or 6 on the base, but in my unit. So when you have a certain title or in a certain position, right, that title comes with more responsibility than I just teach. So when we have students on our, even interacting with the students on my campus, it is more than I am just a teacher or an administrator. I am like, mama, hey, did you do your homework? I still am checking on, and these are kids right out of high school, adults. I'm checking on them, their well-being. Have you chosen a major yet? Did you fill out that financial aid package? Did you get a scholarship? Well, let me help you do this. Let me support you in doing that, because we are still playing the role of mom and encouraging them and trying to support them and just letting them know and reassuring that you're not in this walk alone, even in this period of higher this second stage of higher education that you're pursuing. And I do want to point out that as an institution, if you look at colleges and universities nationwide, we had to make a quick transition due to COVID-19. And the colleges and universities, if you had not already had established programs. It was kind of difficult, right? Because we had to jump right online and move our entire student population online. And I think that, and you may have seen this as well, Cathy, when you talk about disparities in student access to internet, computers, etc., this is when you really see it. Because even though we had students who were in college, we also had some high school students who were taking classes. Those students may not have had access to some of the equipment, the internet, etc. So I think that this not only identified the need for us to be able to make sure that we are continuously strategically planning and that we know how to manage crises such as these, but I think it really highlighted some of the disparities in education, because for those students who already had access to this type of stuff, then it was an easy transition. But I think about some of my kids in the Glades where, we end up having to loan them computers or internet, Wi-Fi stuff so that they can still get their homework done. I have a young lady here, I'm currently in Mississippi, who, she didn't even have a computer for her kids. They're doing, these kids are K through 12, and she's showing them how to do their schoolwork on a cell phone.
Wow.
So, I think that this has been a big eye-opener, and I'm not going to say it's been an eye-opener because most of our eyes have been woke for a long time. It just has just kind of brought it to the forefront, like, hey, this is really happening, and these are some of the challenges that our students are facing, both in K-12 and higher education.
Well, the funding has always been there, but now let's pull the funding and utilize it. The money is the funding has always been there. I think they just always needed a reason to actually tap into the funding. So now, like you said, it just reveals, to me, it just reveals how unprepared we really were, and I think moving forward, now they know educational wise, America has to step this thing all the way up.
Yeah. And hopefully this whole experience will, let the powers that be know, the people that can make those decisions, let them know that this is what we need in order to push our children to the next level, or even pushing, like with Kristy, pushing those in higher education, push them out. Like, once you graduate, this is what you need to do, because honestly, some people need a class about that. Okay, what do I do now? And these are young adults. So
I tell you what I realized, and it's so profound because we always knew this. We knew that you guys, teachers, are really the foundation of our entire system, but you guys are more than role models. The amount of responsibility, the amount of pressure, the amount of things that you do. I felt like I was just tag teaming with you guys as the leaders, and making sure that my daughter was on task and that she was showing up and prepared and still engaged. But my hat's off to you guys, because this is what you do and this is what you get paid for. And just like you said, Kristy, you are such a role model, but you're also loving, caring, parenting, supporting, checking on these people. And what I realized as teachers and educators, you guys sometimes may be the only person doing it for that student. Right. They may only hear something positive from a paid educator. And for them to lack that, I know some kids were really hurting. We have a lot of parents that chimed in and chipped in and, make sure the kids were awake, as like Cathy said, had their breakfast on Zoom, did your homework, have your projects ready, doing your PE stuff. But you also had a lot of kids that missed that connection, that food, that safe environment, that love, that care that you guys provide every day. So thank you, really, really, educators. You guys are everything.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you. You guys, you educators are the real MVPs.
Yeah, I agree.
You're the real MVPs, and hopefully after this, you are I know that there's a respect level, but hopefully the respect level will go through the roof, because we need teachers. And in order for us to keep teachers, we need to treat them how they're supposed. We need to treat them in a certain way.
Yeah.
On that note, because I could talk about education forever, and you guests have been great. Thank you, Tribe. as always. Thank you, special guests. Hopefully now you are friends of Unapologetically Fierce.
Come back anytime.
Tune in next week. Our final episode. Well, our final episode will be on commerce in COVID-19, which will be very interesting. But thank you, ladies. As we always do, raise your glass. Mine's on
water now, but yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us at Unapologetically Fierce with Faythe, brought to you by CKJ Live. Come back and visit again to hear more of the unfiltered tea that we are ready to dish. And remember, we are not just a podcast, we are a movement.